Welcome to another episode of the Bonsai Wire podcast. In this episode, all four of us get together and talk about the work we've been doing this spring. I'm so glad you could join us. Yeah, so we're all on the West Coast, but there's probably some difference about what we're working on, just, California and Oregon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was thinking about that this morning. Jonas, you probably don't have much in the way of frost, do you? Is it now and then real light?
This year we didn't really have much in the way of winter.
Oh, wild.
Let alone frost. And spring was cool. So a lot of things started growing early because it's not cold, but then they never really kicked into gear. So a lot of trees are waking up way slower than normal, and a tiny number of trees are growing more than normal. So as it is every year, it's been an odd year.
Which are the ones that are growing really slowly? Because sometimes, as I understand it, that can be a reaction to not getting enough cold period.
So some of them are the ones that are always slow, like the beach only just opened up maybe a month ago, something like that.
Okay. That happens here too, though. That's the last thing that comes out there.
I have a lot of pines with long candles and no needles yet, for instance, or barely any needles.
Oh, interesting. Huh. Yeah, they kind of read the year for sure.
And I never remember seeing so little growth this late in the season, which is kind of odd. Whereas the chojubai have grown faster than I've ever seen them grow in California, and I cannot tell you why.
I couldn't either. It's a weird plant. It's really, really strange. But one of the things I was thinking of in the hour before we started talking here was that I always look forward to April, which is like our month after repotting, because it's like a break. Repotting it's busy. Sometimes it can be exhausting, and it's nice to slow down, step back a bit and look. And kind of take stock, much like what Jonas is talking about. Boy, we didn't have a winter. These plants are responding very differently. Sometimes, at least for me, I don't notice some of those things until actually repotting is finished because we're so busy. But it's a nice time to enjoy whatever that is for you. For up here in the Portland area, it's usually April into early May. When at this time of year we're pinching spruce, and the Japanese maple extensions are long over, regardless of what we do with them, whether we're pinching them or letting them grow. I found that continual pinching of the Japanese maple can eventually slow them down to the point where they don't create buds. So that's something that seems to have an end zone. We want to give them a break now and then.
Yeah, you've named my favorite time of the year as well. Not much later into the month, but it's right when repotting theoretically ends. And again, theoretically, you've got nothing else to do. That's when I started doing my fall work on pines this year, so it wasn't exactly a break. But,
oh gosh.
But I agree. When everything is wired, everything is plucked and thinned, and everything's repotted, that's usually the one time of the entire calendar year when I think, all right, this is pretty great.
Yeah. That we can do some tasks that are even best done then, but they're kind of not time crunchy kind of things, like cleaning up juniper bark, which is kind of slipping as the cambium grows. It gets looser, so it's easier to take off. It's a great time of year to do that.
I did that inadvertently when again, because I didn't get to my winter work in winter, I wired my junipers throughout April. And it turns out that putting the most aggressive bends you can imagine in junipers and bare rooting them while they're growing very actively doesn't always work.
Yeah.
But interestingly, the Itoigawa, I barely lost a branch. Kishu definitely lost branches. Some entire trees died from the identical treatment.
Yeah. Well, Itoigawa is an incredibly strong plant. One would think it would be more diminutive in all elements because it has that thin shoot, but actually it trunks up faster. It's a really tough, fast-growing plant. It grows faster than Kishu or any of the Shimpaku varieties.
Yeah, they're very rewarding to work with that way.
Yeah.
Back to the April thing, I got a semi-desperate text. It's probably been 2 or 3 weeks ago, where it's a client friend of ours from Washington, and he texted like, what am I supposed to be doing? I'm done with repotting and I'm just itching. Like, I know that there's something I've got to be doing right now. What are y'all doing? Like, tell me what y'all are doing right now. I said, we're taking breaks and we're cleaning the yard and we're rearranging the tools. And he's like, oh, dang, I want to be working on the trees, but there's nothing to do. It's like, well, catch up on the other tasks, you know.
Send them down here. There's no lack of work to do.
Right, exactly. It's like, you could follow the seasons, you know. People that pick mushrooms, they start in California and then they work up to Oregon, you know.
Hit the road.
Yeah, hit the road. Go south.
Let's see. I still have 3 more flats of junipers to wire and repot. I've got 3 more pines to prune. I've kind of given up on plucking at this point. And I've got a load of deciduous trees that need work. Oh, and the oaks came out about 5-6 weeks later than normal. And they are in desperate need of pruning right now as well.
Is this a live oak agrifolia, or you got something else?
Live oak and cork oak. The cork oaks typically start growing right on April 1st every year, and they didn't start growing until a week or 2 ago, which is really strange. And the live oaks just normally come out anytime between December and typically March, but I have some that are only just now opening up, while other oaks are putting on second flushes right now.
Oh my gosh.
So like coast live oak are interesting that way. Even when they're in their native environment, they do really creative things.
Andrew, this is your first spring in your own garden, and so like what kind of different stuff are you doing this year that you know are maybe you weren't expecting for a spring?
Yeah, I'm building fences and moving around gravel and stacking wood and a lot of garden construction. So I'm taking the break from repotting to keep building the garden, which has been fun. I have almost all of my benches up. I still have some benches to do in the greenhouse. I'm fertilizing the trees a lot because I'm focusing so much on garden construction this year. I'm kind of just giving the trees not really a break, but I'm giving them a strong year. So I'm fertilizing a lot, letting them just get nice and vigorous, just so I don't miss anything while I'm focused on garden construction. It's a lot of building at the moment.
I thought it was very kind of appropriate what you did with the huge red oak that you took down to create enough light in the yard. Massive, what was it, 100-year-old tree, and so you had them sawn and created benches out of chunks of that. So there's live edge benches that integrated. That's new. I hadn't seen that before.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice contrast to the formality of the cinder block, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. So how are you figuring out the fertilizer thing? I know a lot of people are really worried about fertilizing deciduous trees in spring.
I'm kind of the opposite. I mean, if I have a really old tree that I'm trying to refine, then sure. But I've been thinking lately that keeping the tree on a stronger side, I'd much rather have that than, keeping it on like the brink of death on the weak side in order to gain ramification. I know a lot of people build trees that way. I'm probably more similar to Walter Paul. Walter Paul pushes his trees hard in the spring. And because of that, he's able to do pretty vigorous work in the summertime. And lately I like seeing strength in order to do a lot of the work that I do in the summer. So I'm giving the trees quite a bit of fertilizer. Most of my garden is young trees. And so I'm still trying to build primary branching. So if I have extension and large leaves and large internodes, I'm not too worried about it because it's going to get cut off.
Are there any trees you're holding back on the fertilizer?
Not too many. I'm fertilizing things at least once a week. And I might give them, half the fertilizer that the plant next to it is getting in the dosage, but I'm fertilizing everything.
Like your big beech, your big Coralopsis, all those guys, quite a bit of food.
Yeah, and I found the big beech, the big Coralopsis, when they have so much ramification, you almost have to fertilize it more in the spring.
Yes.
in order to retain that amount of density, which is totally abnormal for the plant. In bonsai, we're forcing all of this, density, within the space of your hand. Maybe we're forcing, a dozen or 2 dozen branches where normally, the plant growing in the wild would only have 3 or 4.
Right.
And so in order to sustain ramification, I fertilize trees quite a bit.
Mature trees need it. Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of those strange ironies is that building trees, like you're describing young trees, it takes a lot of fertilizer, and then you might actually maintain a very similar level of fertilizer for your mature trees.
Yeah.
And I'm finding that the trees will tell us that even if we do or don't follow a recipe, our teacher tells us. I acquired 7 large mature deciduous trees over winter, and I find that they were already starting to go pale a month ago, and that tells you that they need more fertilizer. The tree's like, hey, look at this, I don't have the resources I need. And so they pretty much, some of them need fertilizer just right out of the gates as they're opening up, or else they're just not going to get that nice deep color in the leaves.
Yeah, I find that too. And then it also seems to depend upon situation. I do know gardens where trees are so strong because of just sort of microclimate situations. It's maybe more humid than what we have, for instance, here in the Portland area in the summer, for instance, or they have more shade or whatnot. And if they're fertilizing at the level that I might be fertilizing, the trees are far too rambunctious. So it's almost impossible, I think, to give somebody a template. Say, this is what you do in the spring.
Right. And you
really,
don't know
really
what the person, and you may not remember what you did in fall, and you may not know what someone else had done with the tree in fall.
Right.
So when you see yellow leaves, you need to fertilize more. When the thing's put on 12 inches by May 1st, you might not need a lot of fertilizer on a mature tree.
Right. Yeah. So the question of when do you start the fertilizer and how do you program it through the year is specific to your place to some degree. But I more and more I lean in the direction of what Andrew was describing, not just for build, although that's a major feature. Most of us are building our trees. Really, we don't have many highly developed trees. But one thing that that definitely comes along with a healthier, stronger tree is that it tends to resist disease. Too strong a tree, and we can attract pests. So there's a there's a little bit of a balance there, but that I found for sure is that you do tend to sidestep a lot of the issues that a tree that just can't quite get enough mineral is going to be susceptible to more disease.
Are you doing any work, John, in your garden this time of year, or is everything just kind of going crazy?
Yeah, things are kind of just going crazy. I am planting, Michael can attest, I'm planting seeds. For the last 3 years, I bought seeds from different sources, mostly maples, and I had almost zero germination rate. I was frustrating myself. Just, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? And then I got some trees off of maple in the front yard here, just some local seed and in the front yard, and planted it and had 100% success rate. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe the seeds are old. So I found another seed source this winter and just planted a ton of seed because I'd had such poor results in the past. And I think I'm about 4,000 seeds in that are, I decided to let them germinate in the substrate before I potted them up, just because I wasn't going to waste pot space this year, And I think I've potted up about 4,000 maples. So there will be maples this year.
Oh, wow.
There won't be room, but there will be maples.
So what's your recipe going to be for year 1 of maple growth from seed?
I don't know. I think I'm probably just going to push hard and let grow, and then I'll begin root work and or putting through a washer next year. But I think this year I probably just push them hard. A lot of sun, a lot of fertilizer.
Can maples do full sun when they're young up where you are?
Yeah, I think so.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, I think, with the more mature trees, we have the possibility of leaf edge burn, or we have, issues with like more mature bonsai, but with the young stuff, I'm not so worried about that. If I get a little leaf burn, or there's just not the same kind of issues that I have to deal with because I've got more soil, I've got more water holding capacity in the soil, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you might not be, cutting them back very much during the year, right? So you're not going to get, burn coming in, and you're just kind of letting them be bushes the first couple
exactly
years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they grow in fairly tight. I think for the first year I can afford to have them in flats where, I don't have a whole lot of sun to the bottom of the trunk, that kind of thing, which we want to be careful with older trees or with more mature bonsai. We want to be careful to spread them out a little bit. But with the young stuff, I'm just really trying to get girth and, wildness there here in the beginning, and then we'll go. Yeah. But I am trying to do some, like, trying to figure out how early I can start wiring. That fine window of, like, okay, at some point it becomes too big to wire naturally. At some point it becomes too brittle, and so it's like, but then when it's tiny, it's real delicate. So it's like, where do you find that balance of, like, how early can I begin to add a little movement to the trunk line, rather than doing like a cut and grow sort of thing, but doing more like Shohin wirings. So yeah, kind of playing with that a little bit this year.
You're going to answer that very naturally because there's no day on which you can wire all 4,000 of them.
Well, no, we're going to try though. We're going to try.
You can start them surprisingly young. It really comes down to how much movement do you want to put in these things, and that's going to answer the question for how old they can be.
Right. Exactly. And the big problem I have right now, and it's one of the reasons I'm playing with this experimentation, is that this first run of maples I did that was so successful, I probably have 1,500 in a 10 by 20 flat, and so it's just a massive amount of trees in there. So obviously they're not all going to survive, but, like, I've got to get them out of there. I got to do something to them. They're not going to thrive in that environment because there's so many of them that came up. So yeah, I got to start playing around a little bit with them.
Nice.
And when do the first trees go in the ground at Left Coast Bonsai?
But probably as soon as we'll move in there around July of this year. And then my first priority is to get a permanent water system. I've got 2 or 3 temporary water systems set up already just to get the things I've got out there to survive. But my first big job is to get a permanent water system going, and then I'll probably throw some stuff in the fall. This potting season, I did a few things into felt grow bags. So they'll just be ready to plop in a hole. I won't have to do any big repotting with them. So yeah, I'm hoping to have a couple hundred plants in the ground by winter. And then the rest of the stuff's just going to live in colanders or pots or whatever for a few years, probably.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild to work on we don't have power down at the grow area. So I've been experimenting with solar powered water pump systems. And that's like really fun and exciting to figure out how to get a direct drive pump running off of a solar panel and to water the trees while I'm not there, because, I'm only going there every other weekend. So I've got to have something that's providing some water to the trees that are there. And so it's been kind of a fun project. And so I'm going to really enjoy doing, we're going to do a lot of alternative. I'm going to do wind and solar just because we don't have power down there. So I've got to find alternative ways to get energy down there to do the small amounts of stuff we have to do with the trees. But
let us know when you figure that one out.
Yeah, no, it's fun. I'll send out some photos because I have just been super excited about. I'm gonna start building a wind. It's a little windier there than it is here. I mean, just I think partly because of the city blocks a lot of the wind here. But once you get out of the city, we get a fair amount of wind, and we're kind of up on a ridge. So yeah, I'm excited to put in some wind stuff and got some fun ideas about different alternative energy stuff. So yeah, I kind of enjoy playing with that in addition to the trees. Or for the sake of the trees.
You were talking about kind of one of the helix wind turbines, not a fan.
Yeah, vertical. Right, vertical. I forget what they're called. A vertical turbine rather than a blades.
And
So
do they work under lower wind?
they work under lower wind, and they're less dangerous to birds and stuff because birds can't really get caught in the blades. And so they're just a little more efficient on a small scale. Once you get larger, what you see on a commercial scale with the blades is a lot more efficient. But on a small scale, like a home scale, the vertical is a lot easier to work with, a lot easier to mount. You don't have as much width, so they're the ones I'm going to be building are only like 2 feet wide and 6 feet tall, and so you don't have that. You don't have to like guy wire it as much or figure out how to hold it up there as well, because it's kind of good center of mass because it's all on a vertical plane. But yeah, so just some combination of solar in the daytime and wind at night and wind in the winter.
Do you guys have multiple wells out there, or one big well, or?
We have an acre, so it's a 15-acre plot, and 40 acres. Sorry, there are 15 acres of growing. There's an acre pond as part of that, so there's an acre of surface water, and then there's 2 wells that are residential water, drinking water wells. So we'll use the acre pond with it, and it's got a spring feeding it. So we'll use that for irrigation, and then the wells for home use.
Have you tested the water? Is it in pretty good shape?
No, it's in terrible shape, actually. We're trying to dig a new well. The well water is not safe, so we're just using it to flush toilets and stuff. And right now, everybody's just pulling in drinking water, 5-gallon from the grocery store or whatever, the fill up your 5-gallon jug. But, it's crazy because the water table there is super low, and so it's super shallow. But they had a well dug, and they went 150 feet and found nothing. So,
oh wow,
they're going to have to figure out somewhere else to punch a well, because this one's the property has 2 levels, and it's at the lower level, and it's just past the pond. So the overflow from the pond is essentially feeding the well. So it's essentially like groundwater runoff that's feeding the current well. So it's just completely tainted. There's just bacterial problems and, chemical runoff problems. So yeah, it's not safe to drink, but we're trying to figure out a new solution to get a drinkable well. But for now, we're just filtering and bringing water in to drink.
Solar powered RO system.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Speaking of solar, we should talk a bit about shade. Starting in spring.
This is a big time of year for micro movement.
Yeah. There's some. I have a real kind of a hot sunny yard, so shade cloth has been a real feature, and certainly in some yards that isn't as important. And if you're growing exclusively pines or junipers or something like that, you might have very minimal or no need for that. But shade cloth is something that for whatever reason, I guess we're in one of the hottest areas of Portland, actually. And I've needed that in the yard. We've gone all the way up to 50% in one area for some of the high elevation cloud cover sort of conifers, like some of the spruce, and also some of the deciduous and accent plants. So we have missed, I think, the window the last 5 years running, except for this spring. I think we finally got it. So, and by the window, I mean when the temperature suddenly jumps like 15, 20 degrees, and you get your first 90-degree day or something like that. You get a bunch of shock on the plants when they're not yet hardened off, especially is when some leaf burn can happen. So. We take down the shade cloth in the wintertime because we get enough snow here that the whole thing could implode. But it's easy to put up and set down. Usually we're using zip ties. It's pretty simple.
So you have some 50%. What's the rest?
40. I had 30 at one point, but it wasn't enough for some of the more tender things. And pines and junipers are just out in full sun. But it allows, having full sun 40 and then 50 allows, depending upon how the tree is looking. And then if it's really, if a tree is struggling a bit for whatever reason, it could go into a greenhouse, which has more shade cloth over it as well, but it stops the wind and whatnot. Andrew, are you thinking of shade cloth anywhere? I can't remember if we've talked about that. Are you going to do full sun? You have more trees than I do surrounding the yard.
Yeah, I have a lot more trees in the environment, but I think I am going to put up shade cloth. Part of my reason for fertilizing things pretty strongly is to delay delay that a little bit. I'm probably not going to be able to get shade cloth up until the end of June, which will still help. I mean, July and August are our worst months here in Portland for strong sun and hot weather. But yeah, I'm currently trying to figure that out. As everyone knows, my garden is practically 90% or more deciduous. And so I have about a quarter acre that I ideally would need to shade cloth, which is a lot. It's a lot of space. And so I'm trying to figure out ways to make it cost effective and also functional for that large of a space.
Yeah. Have you considered Protect? Is that something on your radar?
Yeah, Protect. It's a silicone solution. I'm thinking about it. I haven't applied any yet, but it's probably a good idea. I haven't seen any problems so far in the yard, but with these things, we want to be prophylactic. So I should be, doing some of these things before we even see a problem. But so far, things have been great. Even more sun-sensitive plants like Coralopsis has really been enjoying the full sun so far. I have a huge oak tree or a group of oak trees that block out and shade the garden by around 4:30 p.m., which is kind of our hottest part of the day. And so that's been really helpful to just kind of take the edge off during the hot part. Yeah, I think when I do put up shade cloth, I don't need to do 50. I might need to do 35 or 40, something like that, just because of my surroundings. But I'm currently trying to design a structure, and then we'll be building it early next month.
Great infrastructure.
Yeah.
That's
Jonas,
fun.
do you use any sort of semi-permanent or permanent shade cloth setup in your yard?
Yeah, I just put up, I have a couple benches where the most tender deciduous trees are, the most refined trees. And for years that had always been 30%. And I went to 40% last year and found some things did better, some things did worse. So this year I was about to put up the 30% again when I realized I must have given it away. So I went with 40% since that's what I had. And the one thing I did differently is I haven't added sides yet, because adding sides makes a huge difference depending on how much wind you have. And while some airflow circulation is good, depending on how hot it is where you are, you can benefit a lot from cutting down the wind. So instead, I'm leaving the sides open this year, at least for now. And I guess one of the sides is closed because that's where it gets the afternoon sun. And then I'm just moving trees around to find out what makes the most sense. But it's tough. Some azaleas love the 40%. It's perfect for them. Whereas the deciduous, honestly, most don't need much at all. The problem we get is, today's going to have a high of, somewhere in the low to mid 60s at best. And a few days ago, it got up to 87. And so I would love it if I could have a big curtain I could draw back and forth over it, because I really only need the shade cloth when it gets hot.
Right.
So if I do a permanent structure, that's what it's going to be, is something I can open and close just in the morning.
Little runners.
Yeah.
Pull it over. Yeah. And John, you're going to have a big greenhouse, a huge greenhouse, which could give you some advantage. Of course, a 6 mil plastic, most of the plastic that we buy for greenhouses is 9 or 10% shade cloth equivalents. So there's something right there. Are you planning on having some shade cloth?
Yeah, I don't know if I am. I'm going to have some hoops that I can throw stuff on for deep freezes, most likely. And I may end up doing shade in the summer and covering in the winter kind of thing. But this rigid panel, I can't remember the name of this hard plastic paneling that the greenhouse is made of.
Polycarbonate?
Yeah, polycarbonate. That's right. Sheets of polycarbonate. But it's got some crazy prismic diffuse thing in it. So when you're inside of it, it feels sort of like you're in a kaleidoscope. The light is really odd, and I don't know if it creates any like shading capacity, but I think that the light works differently, so you don't have the same kind of you don't have any direct light as it is.
So the diffusion might be different.
Yeah, the diffusion.
Some plastics have a diffusion.
Right, the diffusion is insane. It feels really weird being in there. Like working inside of there is really kind of weird. It takes a little time to get used to because the light scattering is different. It's kind of like the light is all around you, sort of like if you were in a well-lit room that was painted all white floor and ceiling. It just has this odd ethereal feel to it.
John, that's the way we think of you. The light is all around you. I mean, so I think that'll work well for you.
Right, exactly.
I'm curious. I often do different kinds of things with trees every year, and just based on how they're growing. And I've already started doing a lot of cutback for the trees that came out early this year. And I'm curious, are there any techniques that you're tweaking a little bit or changing or doing differently? Are there any kind of themes you're thinking about this year as you go into the good deciduous season? And that's all of you. Or is it just a simple recipe and you follow the exact same thing every year?
We're students of Michael. We do the same thing every year. Okay. We never change anything.
No, they don't.
Sign me up. Yeah.
Nor should they. Yes, right.
I mean, I think go ahead, Andrew.
I'm being on multi-flush species. I'm being a little less careful than I have in the past. Whereas I would have cut every leaf along the petiole, just very delicately. On tridents and amber maples, I'm just totally attacking them like a deer or a pest would. Having leaves that are ended up cut in half or 2/3, and I'm pulling the leaves off. I have so many plants, and I wonder if the type of work, if you're more aggressive on the plant, if that gets you a more aggressive response. I'm not really sure, but
you'll find out soon.
I'm attacking some plants a little bit more.
Yeah, I noticed you got a chainsaw. I don't know if that was going to be for pruning or what was that?
Chainsaw was for root work, which surprisingly did well. I don't recommend it, but no, I was able to. When you're doing things on your own and you don't have helpers and you're working on big trees, you kind of have to innovate a little bit and get creative, and so that's where the chainsaw came in to play. Rather than hacking away for hours with a concave pruner, just making a 10-second chainsaw cut tended to help, or die grinders or different tools just to, if you have to hold the plant with one hand and really do a lot of woodwork on the bottom, then there are some power tools that can help, but that also brings a lot of risk too. So it's a little tricky, but no power tools on the bonsai themselves on the above the on the woody part of the plant this year. But no, I'm with shears, and I have these Masakuni like hedging kind of shears that I've been using on the tridents, which has been fun. I just started doing some defoliation and cutback the last couple days, but I was at a client's in Texas, a couple clients in Texas, and they're quite a bit ahead of us. I mean, I'm convinced growing tridents in Texas, they probably get 2 or 3 more flushes than we possibly could here in Portland, just because the heat and humidity just they go gangbusters down there. But yeah, I'm being a little bit more aggressive on the multi-flush, and I'm seeing a really positive response on that.
Nice. Do you have any super refined tridents where you're taking more of a pinching approach than a shearing approach?
Not yet. I have personally, I have most of the tridents in the garden, although the trunks are pretty impressive. The branch work is just not there yet. I most of the plants I get is a nice trunk and nothing more than that. So I'm still doing a lot of branch building. Some clients' trees have some more refinement to them, trees that have been imported, and we're a little bit more delicate on those. But the trees that are a little bit younger and rougher, I'm being a little rough on my approach, and that seems to be paying off well.
That's one thing that's always interesting, is trying to help people figure out where the line is between when you let the tree grow out and cut it back because you're aiming for bifurcation versus you have great ramification. You're trying to keep things small and keep the outside from going crazy to where you're pinching something like a trident. And there's just about very little resources available on that for people.
Right, right.
Of course, we have very few refined tridents, so it kind of works both ways.
Sure.
Exactly.
Well, Jonas, what crazy deciduous work are you doing? You're ahead of us, so you're more in the season. We're just kind of getting started in Portland.
Yeah, it's true. I'm watching the some of the tridents. I've already done one round of that kind of partial defoliation, have already been coming out again, and they're budding really well. Last night, I cut back my hornbeam, and I did it a little different than normal. Usually I do quite a bit of outer defoliation, but it's getting dense enough and full enough that it put out a very civilized amount of growth this spring. And I thought, oh, how nice. And so instead of just kind of, again, attacking it, I, for the first time, took a lot more care. I spent 2 hours, I think, on this, 14, 15-inch tree. And I cut back to roughly 2 leaves on the entire tree and then pulled all the big leaves until I saw enough light was getting through. And it was the first time I had done that detailed level work this time of year. And so I'll be curious if it makes a difference or not.
Yeah. Michael, have you started deciduous work yet?
We haven't done too much. We did a fair bit of repotting this year on many of the trees that we normally be working on. And usually when we do that, it give an extra 2 weeks of growth before doing anything, just to let the roots reestablish. But we're almost there. We've had because of that, we've had a little bit of a longer thumb twiddling April/May than usual. But some of the azo spruce in the yard have begun to the foliage masses have begun to mature, and it's incredible how fast they ramify once you begin to start pinching them. If you just sort of let them grow, they're gangly like any spruce, but the pinching feature creates this sort of backbudding. I was just writing a post about this, but it's a funny little plant, the spruce, because usually when you pinch it, it doesn't bud where you pinch, it buds back where that shoot begins, and so you get sometimes even 2 buds back there, and that's when this sort of building and exponential sort of budding happens. And then you can have a fairly small pad, only 6 inches across. It can have over 100 shoots on it, and as they're coming out at different times it usually takes about a month to completely flush out. Every few days you're pinching, and it's a lot of work. It's a very simple little operation, but because there's so many of them, John is on one side and I'm on the other, and we're it's not a very big plant, but it's just an awful lot of work. And they're more involved techniques. I mean, at that stage when the bud is just opening up, you can't see any of the buds along the shoot, if there are any. You wouldn't see them. They'd be so small. So pinching is really the only operation at that stage. If you let it harden off, then you can start seeing that. But there's no way you'd tackle something that is mature like a few of the trees that are starting to look that way. And I created these trees. They weren't trees that we got anywhere. So within less than 10 years, starting this pinching operation, you can create some incredible branch density. It's been fun to watch that happen. Of course, I studied on azo in Japan, and they were all incredibly dense. I mean, there wasn't a single one that was thin, and so I had no idea what that progression was. But from a thin tree to a dense tree, what is it? Well, it's about 10 years or less. It's not all that long.
Do you treat cedars similarly?
Let's see. We have a red cedar. John, help me.
Thinking
Andrew,
more like
is that what it's called?
No, we have 2 yellow cedars.
Yellow. Thank you. Yeah.
I was thinking of true cedar. Cedrus.
Yeah. Sorry. Gosh. In the moment we don't have one in the yard, we have one overhanging the yard, and we haven't thought about pinching it. But for the yellow cedar, we have been pinching it the last few years. I don't know much about this tree. We were gifted one by Anton, and it responds very well to pinching, much like hinoki. You can also pinch it. It's almost identical sort of response. But as far as cedar, I don't pinch cedar. Do you have you done that?
I haven't played with them enough. I did a bunch of
yeah.
pinching on all the long shoots, kind of like what you were saying for the cedar, where when you've got these long shoots out on the end, I pinch those to see what would happen. And then if I'm already getting a short shoot, I just left it alone.
Okay,
And that's a relatively young tree, so I'll be curious to see.
And
like
that's
an Atlas cedar.
Atlas, okay, yeah, true cedars.
get back to us on that. What I've done is let them grow out, and then I cut back to a bud that I can see. There seems to be a range of trees that respond really well to that. Like Doug fir, you can do that with. That works pretty well for them.
And that's what I've done to date. That's why I'm curious about how if
Yeah.
pinching is a viable option or not.
Yeah. I think a really strong full tree pinching many different things is probably an option. On the other hand, if you're building a tree and you want more root growth, you let it grow out and harden off, because that'll grow more roots. At least that's my my instinct with it. But
we've been doing a lot of grafting also. We've jumped into juniper grafting. So pine grafting is the window's closed for us for that, but we've done a ton of juniper, hinoki. We're actually doing a hinoki on a yellow cedar, kind of fun. So yeah, just some fun grafting stuff that we've been working on.
So what's the take rate like when they're growing so rapidly? I know I've done most of my junipers right before they're starting to grow rather than when they're growing at their absolute fastest.
Yeah, it's interesting. We don't do the before. I want to do some playing next year, but we don't graft a whole lot before they start growing. We mostly do in the growth season for the junipers. And I think it's probably user error, but I'm getting probably between 40 and 70% take. But I think that part of that's user error, because some trees I got 100% take and some trees I got 10% take, so it's just who I was working with or what I was doing or what mood I was in, or if the cat was hungry or whatever the situation was,
Are those all side veneers or any approaches?
All sides. Yeah. All scions.
And all buddy taped.
Yeah. Buddy tape scions.
Yeah. The Japanese will do that in June, juniper grafting. So it's very humid there in June. They have their monsoon.
So June's
season.
humid, and that would be after that first flush of growth is kind of hardening off, and so it's not during that flush.
Right. So this is I think this is our first year to try the early. So I just finished a big run on that early growing growth, and then I think with the hope that by the normal season in July, when things are hardened off and ready to go, then we can kind of see what had failed in these early. We can regraft then again if we need to. So we're kind of playing with that a little bit this year, and it's just seeing if we get a little better take on the early stuff. So
yeah, it's fun to experiment a bit. I typically in our garden I've fertilized. Yeah, I've done that as well, but in right around in June is when I usually do most of my grafting. I think, doesn't Fred Mihar down in California graft summer in February? In the Ishis, Gary Ishii? I thought it was in Southern Cal.
That's what I remember talking about with Fred, because we've talked a lot about grafting, and we've always looked at it as kind of a bell curve, because those guys do thousands of grafts, in big years. Right. And it looks like the take rate is highest, and that's what the textbooks will tell you when the understock is asleep, or not. I mean the scions are asleep, but the tree is active. That would be your ideal situation. And so your success rate would be highest right when the trees are waking up, and the rates just kind of drop a little bit from there. I don't know how meaningful that drop is. I just know that I've always aimed for that time, because that's theoretically when you're playing the odds.
And that's what they say about pines as well, is throw your scions that are dormant into the refrigerator for 2-3 weeks. And then when your stock is woken up, then you graft. So if they're saying the same thing about juniper, then that's a parallel.
Yeah, and that they, the season for them might start in, December into January into February, give or take. But that's when I think most of that juniper grafting happens down there. And that's what I've always done it up here. But I know more and more people are grafting more species in more months of the year.
Yeah. Are you doing any grafting, Andrew?
I'm not doing any grafting, but I'm just looking out the window at my black pines, and I'm realizing that decandle season has just creeped up on me. We have
Exactly.
2 weeks to get 2 weeks or so to get them done, and so
Seriously, that early?
yeah, in Portland we like
Yeah,
to
we're
get them all
quick.
done by June 1st. And
Really?
this is the kind of interesting thing where we're ahead of you on that thing. The table's a little turned just because we have, we don't have a lot of heat, and our growing season is not shorter, but we
yeah, at
have
the
more
end.
cold, and so we have to do
Right.
them quite early in the year.
Yeah, that's a
Interesting.
good point. It's a long growing season, but the first part of the growing season and the tail end are cool. Things just kind of creep along.
How open are the pines right now if you're about to start decandling?
Needles are just beginning to come out,
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah.
nothing like
Wow.
where
Like
you're
they're
at, where
turning
the
from
needles
like
are, you know, burst
gold
out.
to green. Like they're
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
about it.
So our
Tips are
trees
just
look the
beginning.
same, but you have to
Yeah.
decandle this early.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Versus
yeah.
versus when do you decandle, Jonas? You're probably like a month or two behind us.
Well, I'm always the worst person to ask for that, but
When should
I-
you decandle in the Bay Area?
There you go.
should. Gosh, the tyranny of the should. The earliest I've ever decandled is May 15th. I remember when I was prepping a couple trees for the U.S. National Show, I tried it as early as May 15, which is, I see, in 2 days.
2 days. Yeah, right. You got a little time.
Got to get on it. And it actually ended up working just fine. And I've decandled as late as, I mean, for a normal tree, I'd say into July, but I can do it a little bit later than that. The first 2 weeks of July, usually no problem, but you can go a little later. Depends on the size of the tree, the health of the tree, all that other normal stuff. And what's so great about the Bay Area is sometimes you decandle early, you end up with a hot summer, everything's too big. Sometimes you decandle late, you get a cold summer. I have often decandled and then not seen the sun for 2 months. And then you take it way less seriously when you know that you're out of control of the weather. And so normally I start decandling end of May, first week of June, and then I wrap up first week of July. That's the core season.
So
how do you handle your a tree that you deem to be a little bit weak, or you decandle it? Do you give it another week or two, or how do you handle them?
If it's weaker, I would likely decandle it earlier rather than later.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's what we've done. Do you like the response of that? Because I've been on the fence.
Well, there's so many different variables. It's funny. It's such a simple act. You can, sometimes you can stop fertilizing a month before decandling. Sometimes you stop fertilizing when you decandle. Sometimes you fertilize all through the decandling period.
Right.
So if it's a young tree and you know it's strong and it's an earlier stage of development, but it's a little weak, maybe you decandle at the normal time, but fertilize all the way through, for instance.
Right. We've done that in some years where everything seems a little weaker than I had expected. Yeah.
Another thing I'll do is more and more I'm decandling trees. I'm cutting them back past the normal spot into the old needles. And so I'm cutting back to trigger needle buds instead of adventitious buds. And so in that case, I actually decandle about 2 weeks earlier on average when I'm going for needle buds. And I'll give those trees a lot more fertilizer. And I did that with all of my most refined shohin last year, where I decandled them. I cut them back to, I didn't keep more than 2 pairs of needles from the previous year's growth. Wow. That's how hard I cut them.
Oh my gosh.
And what's funny is you you get a ton of budding and you shorten up all your inner nodes, and it gives you an awesome kind of way to make up for past mistakes. If you're letting things get too big.
Sure.
The other thing I've noticed is I'll do a lot of cutback at decandling if need be, apart from asking for needle buds, where some of my trees I didn't get to my fall cutback yet. And so if I reduce 50% of the branches when I decandle, it'll help those branches push a little bit more. And so then you start balancing, okay, it's a weak tree that was repotted, but if you cut back, that has a little more push for those remaining shoots. And so you start measuring what's the cost if I don't decandle. If it's a small bud, maybe I'll just skip it that year. If the buds are huge, then I know that I'll be better off decandling.
Yeah. How do you handle the needles, the long needles if you don't? Are you in favor of cutting those, or do you do cutting them back to the length of decandled needle regrowth? Or
I think of that as I think of that as a completely it's funny, superficial is the wrong word, but meaning for looks only. If you want it to look nice, you cut it back. If you don't, you leave it long, as long as the light's getting in there. You know, introducing the leaf size a little bit. So it's kind of like cutting your maple leaves in half. But I tend to cut very few needles in a given year, like most years close to none, actually.
Yeah. It certainly has importance in a show. For aesthetics.
I'm also going to be decandling more young trees than I normally do, just because I'm playing with different ways of getting the inner nodes I want at some early stages of development. So you kind of slow down on some of the trunk building to get some of the structure you want, and then you re-accelerate the trees from there.
And do you work with some single flush pines as well? Do you do any pinching this time?
You know, a small number. Speaking of slow trees, I have a couple of what I think are ponderosa pines, and one of them, the candles are just now elongating. I don't even have differentiated needles coming out of it yet. And here it is mid-May. But no, we can't do some white pines you can grow around here, some you can't. If they're grafted and have the bluish cast, they usually do fine. If it's the yellowish cast white pines, I move them along to people that have winter as fast as I can, because the odds are just very low that they'll do well down here. But
what about
those? Sure, those all do well.
Do you have any plants that you're gonna decandle that are not a Japanese black or red pine?
No, I don't think so. Nothing comes to mind for that. Do you?
Yeah, I have a loblolly pine that's a pretty significant tree, and that one's really funny to compare to the black pines because it's it's a very large tree. It's maybe 4 feet tall or something like that, and I decandle that at the same time that I do my Shohin black pine because it's such a strong plant. If you live in Texas or the Carolinas, somewhere where it grows, you can get 2 flushes a year. And you can decandle it twice, but it's a very, very strong plant, and so I have to do it. This is one of the last ones that I do.
Oh, that's cool.
We have some images coming out this week on my blog of this wonderful loblolly.
Oh, good. I look forward to seeing that. I want to get a nice Monterey pine. Those are some fun non-black pines that have their own odd decandling schedule.
I've never worked on one. Yeah.
What makes them odd? How are they different?
Well, like so many species, depending on who you talk to, there's a whole different approach to how you grow them. And some people try to, the most extreme I saw was back when Ernie Kuo was keeping them juvenile. That was one approach. Another approach would be, Boone has on occasion recommended decandling every other year. And what's interesting is if you attack them too much, they will go all juvenile. And so the trick is, how do you get the right size inner nodes and the right size vigor so you end up with needles that you want to have by wintertime?
Okay, I'm a deciduous guy, so I don't understand this. What does juvenile growth look like on a pine? What is that? We know what it looks like on a juniper. That's easy. But
so instead of getting differentiated needles that come in, 2s, 3s, 5s with a little fascicle wrapped at the base, it's more of a fleshy growth that comes kind of like the bracts on a black pine that comes directly from the bud itself.
Yeah.
They're usually a pale color, often a blue color, much shorter needle. And so I think more like a Procumbens juniper with both mature and needle foliage, or a San Jose juniper that you prune so hard you keep it all needles.
Yeah, the pinyon pines that I played with when I lived down in Arizona would grow in a pot, would often grow juvenile right alongside normal needle growth. That was pretty curious. But I remember what Ernie was doing. He was also doing that, I think, with Aleppo pine or some of the Mediterranean plants.
Those are very easy to keep juvenile.
Right. And stone pine, was he doing that?
Yeah, the Pinus pinea and the
and
the holopensis are both good options for juvenile if that's the look you're going for. But those are also really fun ones. When I started writing about it, I had all this fun feedback from people all over the world who it turns out that whoever you ask gives you a different definition for decandling. They're like, of course we decandle white pine. Of course we decandle mugo pine. And they all meant very different things about it. And it often ended up being forms of pinching the shoots at the very end of the bud, or breaking buds, or things to slow down those. But they all said, nope, it's decandling, and that's what we do, and it's the best. Great.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's hard to have a conversation if we're we're talking on different ends of technique with different words. Anyway.
But yeah, thanks for reminding me, Andrew, that I've got to start on the pines soon. I'm building a shed this week, so that's
oh gosh.
Oh, really?
That's my days are doing that, and then at night I'm just picking a tree off the shelf to cut back and wire.
That's funny. I'm building a shed as well.
Nice.
In the same boat.
Nice.
Spring work, everybody.
Yep.
Right.
Make a shed.
Building a shed and decandling a pine at the same time.
Exactly. So yeah, I might have to start decandling soon. I was going to start probably at June, but maybe I should start early now that I'm talking to you all. But again, the sun won't come out today, so whether or not I do anything, the tree's not going to grow much anyway.
This is the marine layer you're talking about that just sort of hangs around. Okay.
Yeah, and it's highly variable. We can get sunny Julys and we can get warm Junes and Julys. You never know going into it. Our highest temps are actually, very oddly, in the Bay Area. September is usually the hottest month.
Oh, yeah.
So not good if you're trying to time things for a show in September. Not bad if you're trying to time things for a show in the dead of winter.
Speaking about shows, how's the Pacific Bonsai Expo going? Is there any movement on that?
Not public movement, but Eric and I are working on the website, and we're actually starting to chip away at our policies. We spent a day together shopping for redwoods up at Bob Shyman's place, Mendocino Coast Bonsai, and that gave us a lot of opportunity to talk about everything but the show. But we did kind of figure out at least what our next steps are. So we're building out the website. We're coming up with our policies. We're trying to line up jurors to see what trees can get in. And our goal is that by just a few months out from now, that we actually have a functional website, that we have the venue and the dates, and that we have jurors and guidance for people that want to show trees.
Great. I haven't listened to it yet, but everyone, we do have a podcast out there with Jonas talking about this show with Eric. Yeah. Do you have an idea of the dates? Do you want to throw that out?
We're looking at the second weekend in November 2022.
Okay.
We'll be setting up on Friday, and then it'll be a Sunday, Saturday show. So same basic bonsai brief format. And I have talked with the venue as well, and they've confirmed those dates are available. We have yet to tie it down, but it does look like the dates are good.
Nice.
And that will give people the option to show trees in fall color or bare. And for you all, would that be bare at that time of year?
It'll be bare. Yeah. And it's great because we can get away from the garden and not have to worry too much about watering, which is
nice.
Nice.
Yeah, the timing is excellent.
Yeah, September is probably for the national show. You could not pick a worse time to be away from the garden for us. That's when we're going to hit our 100-degree days. That's a hard time.
Yeah. The only question mark for us would be the pass of Mount Shasta. We might have to come down the coast.
Oh gosh.
Never know what's going to happen up there.
Yeah, and interestingly, the drive's
never heard of.
The drive's longer for you all than it is from us, just because the highway runs direct through from San Francisco. So.
Right.
Okay, well, so is there anything else we didn't cover? You got fertilizer and grafting and pruning and gosh, even decandling already in spring.
Yeah.
Have you done any leaf pruning yet, or does that come out a little bit later?
Later for us. We don't even have leaves on some of our trees yet.
Really?
No, that's not true.
Well, actually, I did want to. Oh, go ahead.
I'm just starting to think about some leaf pruning. I'm looking out at a Shishigashira that's just hardened off and seeing, just starting to see some yellow leaves on the interior. So I gotta start getting busy on that. The Coralopsis are especially difficult because they get a leaf that's quite large, and so the larger leaf plants I tend to clean out earlier than the smaller leaf ones. So,
Have you ever tried cutting those leaves in half, or do you just cut off leaves you can afford to cut off?
I cut them in half. I fold them and cut them at an angle so it still kind of looks like a leaf. But I do cut them in half, or even sometimes by 2/3, just depending on how big it is compared to the other ones around it. But it's
This reminds me, Andrew, I have to ask you what you want us to do with the beech at the Japanese garden.
Oh yeah,
if anything, Did
Yeah,
I tell you it's growing in another set of shoots?
yeah.
Following
It's,
your
it's
cutback, it's
a
really
second flush of
I
growth on a
know.
beech is very abnormal.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think we
Young.
should pinch it again. It's
Uh-huh.
kind of an unruly plant.
It's young and coltish.
Yeah,
It's been fun to watch.
Need some limits.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm fertilizing everything else, but that one I'm pausing. Probably next week.
Yeah, I think we could pinch that.
Okay.
And how's the Japanese garden going? We have a few plants up there, and
yeah, they're doing well. Yeah. Evan is actually going to start studying with me in the seasonal classes.
Oh, great. Yeah, it's exciting to have trees back at the Japanese garden again in the public. It's kind of nice.
Yeah. It's a nice outdoor museum of sorts just to show your work. Yeah.
Actually, that reminds me, I wanted to follow up on what you were saying, Michael, at the very beginning about limits to pinching maples.
Yeah. Do you have any feelings about that? I'm curious about that one. Hearing other people's experience.
I have more maples this year than I did last year in the garden. And what I found is I don't hesitate to pinch where the tree is strong, but I don't find as big a benefit, or at least as necessary, to pinch the kind of the lower interior weaker stuff. And so I've got a little tiny Shohin maple where if I don't pinch every single thing, and literally if I miss it by a day or two, then my internodes are shot. Like, the timing is incredibly narrow for pinching robust small trees. But for the bigger trees, I'm finding that selective pinching seemed to work really, really well. So the tops of trees, the spots where the bigger shoots keeps coming out, and at the very tops of stronger maples, I'm finding you kind of need to keep pinching throughout, or you're just going to get big shoots that, you miss a week and you're going to have 5-6 inch shoots on the top of the tree.
Yeah, I think a modest sized tree, large Japanese maple, is so similar. It's almost like a benchmark for any other single flush plant. You're attending to the strong parts and you leave alone the weak ones. It's very, very sort of logical. But as you said, those really small plants, my hats are off to people who do Shohin Japanese maple. Hats off. Incredibly hard. Timing.
But can't you just kind of say screw it and just let it extend and defoliate it?
You get these giant internodes. You've lost your whole year's growth, and then you're pushing from the same bud, which means you got these big fat twiggy things.
It's almost like missing a Shohin black pine decandling. I think, unless you're willing on the Japanese maple to cut back to wood. I think
that's what I
I
find.
don't think you have an option. Yeah.
And
in fact, we have a tree in the yard that's doing just that.
Yeah,
we did miss the window this spring, and we're going to have to cut it back hard.
Yeah, I sneezed this year and missed the window to cut back. And so what's the character on the Addams Family that's just like a big
Cousin It?
Yeah, that's what it looks like this year, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I sneezed, and 4 minutes later the internodes were 5 inches long, and was like, okay, well, this year.
And so I found that on the Shohin, I repot in the winter, and then you have to pinch right when they come out. And then just a few weeks later, you have to cut off every other leaf. And then around that same time, you have to cut every leaf in half. And if it's still putting out new shoots, then I partially defoliate or fully defoliate, and then do it again in the second half of the year.
Wow.
That's one of the funniest things about our perception, or at least the perception I had about Japanese maple. It's like, oh, it's a single flush plant. This is one of the easier ones to take care of. And actually, it's far busier and more time sensitive than trident maple, which we think of as this, really busy plant. But the busyness of, as Andrew was saying, if you live in a warm, humid climate, you can cut it back, or defoliate it. The whole bunch of times during the year, but it's all spread out. It's not all packed
That's right.
into this really intense spring. And so it's often one of the first plants that we work on, strangely enough.
Yeah, and it's one of the most forgiving in that it gives you a few short internodes and then a few long ones.
Right.
So it bakes in the internodes we
Sure.
want. Whereas Japanese maples are almost the exact opposite. They're like, ooh, let's get out there as fast as we can to try to capture more light.
Yeah.
But what I found about the maple recipe is that it changes year to year. It's not necessarily going to sustain all of that growth. And so more and more I'm finding out, if you really want to hit it right, you've got to kind of pay attention to what the tree's doing. Maybe it won't be as dense. Maybe you don't need to cut the leaves in half. Maybe you won't have to partially defoliate, and maybe you'll have to fertilize a little more, maybe a little bit less. And so I thought when I first got the internodes I rejoiced. I had 1/4-inch internodes all over this tree one year. And I thought, wow, that's the greatest thing in the world. And then I realized I had to change the recipe the very next year because it had been so weak that previous year. Obviously, it didn't have the oomph to push the next year. So you're always just kind of surfing along.
That's right. That's
to figure out which techniques to throw at the tree.
Yeah, everybody. We were just watching Jonas do this undulation with his hand. It's like a sine wave, and you're absolutely right. If you miss or if you keep that same program going the next year, the tree won't create buds, and then you've just lost your branch.
And so now for those larger maples that I've taken over the care for, I'm finding they're a little bit dense near the top, but they're just fine near the bottom. And so I'm going to go in and take out probably every other leaf in those more dense areas. And then that's going to be it for the year. I've just kind of done working on those guys.
Yeah. Then you worry about
Jonas, I'm glad you circled back to pinching, because I wanted to ask you. I went from my garden. Maple is the #1 species I have by genus in my garden, but #2, I used to have very few hornbeams. Now they're the second most common genus in my garden. I'm wondering, have you pinched your Korean hornbeam in the past?
I haven't pinched it, and that's probably one of the best things I should try. I now have several more hornbeam this year, and so I have some things to play with. So maybe next year I'll do that. This year I did a lot of repotting, and so a lot of things I'm just kind of letting them grow for the year. But no, I tend to let it shoot out, and by shoot out, it's often 1 inch to 2 inches of growth I get by this time of year, and so it's kind of just what you want to get a little branch division. Have you done a lot of pinching on hornbeam?
I haven't, but I was watching the extensions here. I was like, wow, these look a lot like beech. I should be pinching these, but I was like, well, I've never seen someone pinch a hornbeam. It's, they don't have a lot of them in Japan, so there's not, articles on it or whatnot. And so, yeah, I don't know. I'm going to start trying.
Do you have different kinds of hornbeam, either the American or European?
I have, most of the hornbeam I have are Korean. I probably have now 2 or 3 dozen Korean hornbeams in the garden. But I also have the Japanese, they call it the red twig hornbeam, the Carpinus laxiflora. And so I have maybe a dozen of those kind of sprinkled around. And so those are a little bit more on the sensitive side. I don't think I would ever pinch those, but the Korean hornbeams, which are quite a bit stronger, I'm looking at them growing in the early spring, and I'm like, maybe I should pinch that. But
and I find that's where genetics comes into play, because the one I've worked on the longest just naturally has incredibly tiny leaves, whereas the hornbeam on the shelf right next to it, the leaves are 2 to 3 times bigger. And so that one it's kind of more like a trident, but with it's like a big leaf trident is how that hornbeam is growing. And so I can't cut it back as hard as that, but I'm looking to do a lot more cutback on that. And that might be a good candidate for pinching next year.
Yeah, or even partial leaf, like cutting a leaf in half. I've maintained a big old Korean hornbeam, and they do respond to that pretty well.
I'm going to have to do that. It's either an American or European hornbeam. I don't know what it is since it came out. I actually need to look that one up, but the leaves are enormous on it, maybe 2-3 inches long. And so I'm going to have to do some radical leaf pruning on that tree.
A lot of shade. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, you've got too many trees, Andrew, to do leaf pruning on every one of those things.
Yeah, and that's where some of the more aggressive techniques with the garden shears can kind of come in.
Sure.
Especially when the plants are rough and younger, and you don't care if you have a leaf that's kind of cut at a weird angle or something.
Yeah, early development. If you have a lot of plants, your tools change.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you pinch
Absolutely.
most of the shoots on the healthy beech in winter or in spring when they're coming out?
I do on beech, yeah, especially if it's a young one that I'm trying to rein in once the trunk and primary branch is there. That I find pinching is one of the only ways to really slow it down. And so, like that beech that went to the Japanese garden that we were talking about earlier with Michael, that tree was pinched and it wasn't fertilized, but it did have a hard cutback, so that forced it to flush again after its pinching. And so we'll pinch it again and try and roll it in. But that's a tree that.
Wow.
Or it's a forest planting. I'm trying to really slow it down and kind of stabilize it. So that was one of the few exceptions of plants I did not fertilize this spring.
That's amazing.
But
It's
most,
so strong. It's
yeah,
just so strong, and I haven't either. There.
yeah, beech are a little difficult to try and slow down. But once they do, I mean, they get these incredibly small leaves and they become quite easy to maintain. It's just that shift from being a robust plant to a nice, moderate bonsai. That shift is really difficult.
And I think that's what I have. I did a fairly involved repot on a beech forest. It's maybe 40, 50 years old. And after the repot, I just wanted to make sure it grew. And that's the one where the darn squirrels ate. They pretty much ringed the trunk on every one of the trunks. That was just a lovely bit of a help that the squirrels offered in the garden this year. And the tree came out super late, but zero elongating shoots on it. It just produced tiny leaves and tiny internodes without a single human touch on it. And so this year, at least, it's being a magic bonsai. So I'm just kind of fertilizing it and just letting it do its thing because I'm like, this doesn't seem right for beech.
So the takeaway from this episode for our listeners is that you can decandle black pines anywhere from March until August, right? You said August? And then
I've done September. Yeah.
Oh, September. Okay. So anywhere from May to September, or maybe even April. And then the other is that you just let your squirrels, like, encourage the squirrels to chew on the trunk in order to slow your trees down. Okay, good. Yeah, I think one thing that we've heard from our 4 listeners is that they want a little more practical, things they want to get out of each of our conversations. So that's good to, like,
Well, I can tell you where to buy bulk pepper spray or a pepper powder to take care of this, to keep the squirrels away. That's a very practical tip.
We have coyote urine in our shed. We haven't used it yet, and I don't even want to think how they got it, but that's been
Andrew,
our.
Did you buy that? I don't know where we got it.
Yeah,
from.
we got it. I forget why. Oh, we saw a skunk in the yard. That's why we bought that.
Yeah, that's right.
And so we bought it for that. But it's amazing what you can buy on Amazon these days.
Oh my. Practical knowledge, everybody. You can find it right here.
Right.
John, is Left Coast Bonsai going to start doing Amazon Prime?
No.
You're not gonna. I'm not gonna be able to get a black pine pulled from the field and at my doorstep by 8 p.m. the same day.
We're going the other way. When I move out there, we're going to the can and string communication model.
Nice.
So you have to pull.
Right.
I'll know who it is by how many jingles on the bell for how many times they pull on the string. So that's, you won't be able to find. You have to come find us. That's going to be my motto. I'm there. Come find me. No Amazon.
Speaking of sending pines, John, those pines you sent are looking fantastic. No broken needles, are healthy, and the pots have been nice. The felt pots seem to be a perfectly great alternative for young trees.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I'd love to see some photos as they progress through the year here. That'd be great.
They probably look exactly as you sent it because everything's growing so slowly.
Well, yeah. Yeah, it's been a funny spring for our growth. It's kind of off and on, really bad off and on, but yeah.
But they're healthy and beautiful. The color's great.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
John, you just made an Instagram that people should start following, right? Left Coast Bonsai.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah, Left Coast Bonsai. I'm not sure how well the can is going to take photos, but I'll do what I can to continue sending out photos with the can. The pinhole. I just leave a pinhole. That's what I do. Pinhole camera.
That's right. Pinhole camera.
Pinhole can. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have the technology.
Pinhole cans. So yeah, follow us, Left Coast Bonsai on Instagram. I don't think I'll probably do any of the other socials, but we're there.
Nice. Well,
Yeah.
any other spring things come to mind from any of you?
No, I think we got to get out and water.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
I was just
It's going to
looking
be
at the
warm
sun.
today.
We've had a very dry spring here, so our watering has been on point this spring. It's
right.
been very involved.
Yeah, we're at 50% of our normal rainfall. I don't think we've seen rain since March, like not one drop. And this, after a second year of drought, I'm kind of terrified that our water quality and availability is just dropping out from under us right now.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah, I've thought about getting like a 55-gallon drum and just filling it with water, just in case.
Not crazy.
The music on today's podcast was brought to you by the fine folks at Blue Dot Sessions. Check them out at www.sessions.blue.
All right, what are we talking about today before we get started?